Today we're going to look a little closer at integers and absolute values. We have two vocabulary words for you to add to your sheet, absolute value and integer. Go ahead and write that in your box, and as we go along we will define what each of these words mean. First we want to look at a number line. All the numbers on a number line, we start at 0, and 0 is actually in the middle of your number line. And all the numbers to this direction are integers. They're the counting numbers. Integers are counting numbers. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Plus, we're going to add to that the negative of each of those integers. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and so on this way. So the number line goes infinitely this way, positive, and infinitely that way, negative. Okay, so integers are the whole numbers or counting numbers and all their opposites. So if I had the number 5, let me grab a pen. Number 5, its opposite would be negative 5. The number negative 7, its opposite would be positive 7. So for every number on this side of the number line, there's an opposite on the other side. So if I wanted to put these numbers on the number line, graph the integers negative 2. So negative 2 would be on, here's my 0, and that's my kind of halfway point. So negative 2 would be on this side, and I can put a dot right there at negative 2. Positive 1 would be right here, positive 1. And negative 4 would be right here. So on this side of the number line, as we go to the right, the numbers get bigger. So if I have a number 2 and a number 10, 10 is bigger than 2. But when you go this way, it looks a little different, because if I have negative 2 and negative 10, negative 2 is actually bigger than negative 10, because they're moving this direction on the number line. So if I want to decide which is bigger, I could look at the number line. Let's pick two different numbers. Let's see. Let's pick negative 8 and 3. So once I plot them on the number line, negative 8 and negative 3, you can see that a little better. 3 is farther on the right side than negative 8 is. So negative 8, negative 8 is less than positive 3. Okay. Whoops. I'm going to take all the writing away. Now, absolute value. Absolute value, the number of units or distance, and this is important, an absolute value is actually a distance between an integer and 0 is called the absolute value. So you can write this vocabulary word down. And if you need more time, just go ahead and pause the video. So, distance always comes back to 0. So if I highlight my 0 line right here, distance from 0, the absolute value is the distance from 0. So let's see, negative 10 right here. How far is negative 10 from 0? Well, it's 10. So the absolute value, and we draw absolute value with these bars. They're kind of like brackets, but they're straight up and down. It's 10. So the absolute value of 10 is 10. Now if I wanted to look at the absolute value of positive 10, so here's positive 10, right? And how far is it from 0? Well, it's also 10 from 0. It's just 10 the other direction. So the absolute value of 10 is 10. Now, one of the common mistakes people make is to think that absolute value means you change the sign, which is what we did here, because we started with negative 10 and we changed it to a positive 10. But that's not really true, because if you start with a positive 10, the absolute value of that is still positive 10 because absolute value is distance and it's always positive. Notice this is positive and this is positive because distance is always positive. So I could get another number. Let's see, let me clear this off and we'll look at another number. So let's look at negative 20. What is the absolute value of negative 20? Well, how far away from 0 is negative 20? Well, there's 10, 20. It's 20. So the absolute value of negative 20 is 20. The absolute value of 15. The absolute value of 15. So 15 would be right here on my number line. And that would be 5, 10, 15 from 0. So the absolute value of 15 is 15. So when we look at integers, and we're going to look at each of these integers here, and it says to decide whether or not the absolute value is greater than 15 or less than 15. So the value of the number, is it greater than or bigger than 15 or less than 15? Let me grab some numbers down here. Negative 6. So the absolute value of negative 6, that means the distance the number is from 0, and that is 6 away from 0. So the absolute value of negative 6 is less than 15. Positive 14. The absolute value of positive 14 would be 14, and that is less than 15. Plus 4. The absolute value of positive 4 would be 4. That would be less than 15. The absolute value of negative 3 would be a positive 3, and that would be less than 15. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. That would be less than 15. The absolute value of 10 is 10, so that is less than 15. The absolute value of 12 is 12. That would be less than 15. The absolute value of negative 11 is positive 11. That's less than 15. I think I got some more down here. Okay, the absolute value of 33 is positive 33. Now that is greater than 15. I'm going to move these up here so I can see my top of my board. Let me do this. Okay, there we go. So the absolute value of 16 is 16. That is greater than 15, so that's going to go on this side. The absolute value of negative 16 is 17. The absolute value of negative 17 is positive 17. That's greater than 15. Negative 29. The absolute value of negative 29 is positive 29. So that is greater than. Whoops. The absolute value of 18, or negative 18, excuse me. The absolute value of negative 18 is positive 18. So that goes there. The absolute value of positive 25 is 25. So that goes there. It's bigger than 15. The absolute value of positive 22 is 22. That's greater than 15. And the absolute value of negative 23 is positive 23. And that is greater than 15. So there we go. And we can check it. And that's right. Now, sometimes we have absolute values mixed in with expressions. And this is like our order of operation problems that we've done. And we treat our absolute value bars like our parentheses. So that means they always have to be done first. So if I have the absolute value of 8 minus the absolute value of negative 5, the first thing I want to do is the absolute value. So the absolute value of 8 means the distance from 0. So how far away from 0 is 8? Well, it's 8 units. Then I'm going to look at this absolute value of negative 5. So how far away from 0 is negative 5? Well, it's 5. So I put down 5. Now the negative sign here, though, I didn't do anything with that. So I'm just going to bring it down. Remember, when we don't do something, or we don't use something, we just bring it down. And then I'm ready to do my subtraction. So 8 minus 5 is 3. So my answer is 3. Now, sometimes we have an expression like this one where there is an operation inside the absolute value. So just like if we had a parentheses, we would have to start inside. So I can't do absolute value until I do what's inside. So 7 minus 4 is 3. I write down 3. But I didn't do absolute value, so I have to keep those absolute value bars. That's important. Plus, I bring down the plus, 10 minus 7. And that is 3. Absolute value of 3, how far away from 0 is 3, is 3. And then this one, how far away from 0 is this 3? Well, it's also 3. Bring down the plus sign. 3 plus 3 is 6. Okay. Evaluate absolute value of 5 plus the negative 5. The absolute value of 5 is positive 5. The absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. 5 plus 6 is 11. And this one looks a little different. It's got an A in it, but we've done this before. Remember we talked about our presents, and variables are like gifts that we don't know what they are. So I'm going to write down my absolute value bars. And then I'm going to put my little box here with my present. And I'm going to do minus 2. Don't forget the minus 2. Then it tells me over here, right next to it, it says if A is negative 5. So there it tells me what what my A is. So I'm going to come back to my present, and I can write negative 5. This is kind of small, but I can get it in there. Negative 5. So now that I have a number in there, I can do this absolute value. So the absolute value of my negative 5 is a positive 5. And bring down the minus sign in the 2. And 5 minus 2 is 7. And that is how you do absolute value.